Welcome to our Urban Legends podcast. I'm Dr. Gloria McDaniel Hall. I've been a teacher, a principal, and assistant superintendent, all within urban schools in Chicago and around the country. Our Urban Legends podcast is a forum for sharing ideas, strategizing together, and supporting each other as we dismantle the deficit narratives sometimes associated with urban education and discuss where and how amazing work is being done. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 25 of Urban Legends. And I'm so very excited because today I have one of my former students with me who is now a doctor. So we're going to dig into his work, into his journey in education a little bit after we start. But just a reminder, like the purpose of the Urban Legends podcast is to really change the narrative about what's happening in schools. Like if we were to just not be an educator, but look at what's on the news or things that we read about what's happening in schools, it all seems so like deficit mindset. And I know that my students are out here changing the world. So the first purpose of Urban Legends is to change the narrative. The second purpose is to really show the power of relationships, because I really intentionally try to build relationships with my students so that I can get them to come back and do stuff like this. Let me interview them. And the coolest part is my student, Dr. Efrain, interviewed me on his podcast. He's doing outstanding stuff. But I want to celebrate him because from the moment I met him, I knew how serious he was about the work. And sometimes you could tell, and that people aren't just doing it because they want another degree. They're doing it because they really want to make lives better. So everybody, let's welcome Dr. Efrain Martinez.
Thank you for
Yes,
having
yes,
me here.
yes. So Dr. Efrain, before we even get into like all the questions, could you tell us a little bit about your journey in education and what you're currently doing in your position now?
Yes, my journey of education, I'm one of those educators that wanted to be a principal before I wanted to be a teacher. So basically, I wanted to cross the bridge before even getting to the bridge. So I stumbled a lot as a teacher. I graduated from the university, wanted to be a writer, and realizing that one day you go through that commencement and you feel like $1 million and everybody celebrates you, and the next day you're unemployed with no skills. And I ended up working in a hospital as a secretary, database coordinator, and I hated that position with a passion. I knew that was not what I was meant to be. But you know what? Steve Jobs says that life only makes sense when you look back and you connect the dots. So if there's one thing that I could tell my younger self is, no matter what you're doing today, this is going to be a lesson that you're going to look back and it's going to make sense.
That's perfect.
So this is the main lesson. As I was serving coffee and delivering mail, doing the different departments in the hospitals where the residents and the fellows were, I had the opportunity to witness the professional development of the physicians and how
Nice.
seriously they took it and how they address each other with respect, and they honor each other's specialties. And I realized how important continuous learning was. And that's something that I took with me to the education world as a trajectory. So I began as a teacher, again thinking I want to be a principal. That is my destination, because when I was growing up, the teacher that impacted me the most was not a teacher, was actually a principal.
Principal.
So I wanted to emulate that. So I was a Spanish teacher in Chicago Public Schools, and it was not until I gave up on the idea of becoming a principal that I actually became a decent, respectable teacher.
Nice.
And after sometimes when you give up, is that that idea comes back and says, okay, now I want you. And the administration world call, I got a call from someone that wanted to recruit me. I ended up as an assistant principal. I was an assistant principal in different schools and different sides of the city, which gives you a perspective. It broadens your
Mm.
horizon. Eventually ended up being a principal in a school where they have searched 5 different searches for principals and they couldn't land someone.
Wow.
It was a school in chaos. The Spanish media was there in all the meetings. Parents were cursing at each other. It was tumultuous. And of course, I had no clue that was happening. I just saw a
Before you
beautiful
took the
building, right? And whoa, like out of the 6 years that I was a principal there, the first 2 years were catastrophic. I'm telling my house got egged. My the Mexican consulate came up and said, stop discriminating against Mexicans. It was so everything that I was doing was wrong. And when you look back and connect the dots and you say, okay, of all the things I was doing, of the things that I was responsible, that I could actually have been controlled, I realized that perhaps the little salt that I could put in my food was that I was not considering about how my message was landing in the people that I was leading. That doesn't mean that everything that was bad, it was my fault. Of course not. But of course, I was not perfect. I wanted to improve. So that's how I ended up in National Louis, because I realized, you know what, I'm going to, like those physicians, I'm going to go back to the university and pursue a doctorate and write and research on something that could improve me as a principal and make me see what the heck I'm doing wrong. And that's how I landed in the study of emotional intelligence and like how to perceive things, and only in the people that I was leading, but also in the way I was doing things. I combined that study of emotional intelligence with shadowing successful school principals. And that really made a difference because I was able to see firsthand how the successful principals did it, how they look at the people they were leading, how they position their body, how they put their hand like Oprah in the upper arm
Yes.
of the person, how they express themselves in a calm manner. And as a result, I was able to see their teachers and how much they believe in the mission and vision of the school without the principal being an authoritative figure. And the most important conversation I had it with Charles Anderson in his school, Michelle Clark. He has an office with a bunch of shoes in the back because he changes shoes often, and he has a replica of the Pope shoes. And I said, how cool is that you have this? And I remember taking a picture of it. And he told me, yes, because sometimes I have to walk through these hallways like I am the Pope. And it took me a while to
Wow.
understand what he meant. But with time, I understood, and you meet someone smart when they give you a message and they don't define it what it is. They let you marinate it
On it.
and
Yes.
realize with time, right? So what he meant is like if you extract the religious connotation, the Pope has to go through the entire world and the church in India and the church in Argentina and the church in the United States, and in every state, in every region, there's different varieties, and still they have to handle the emotions and the beliefs and the approaches of everyone, and yet still be strong with the mission and vision of the organization. So
Yes.
that's what a good principal does. Every teacher, no matter what performance they do, they care about the student, but they come from different places, and you need to empathize with them to be able to support them and make them feel motivated to want to do better. So
Wow.
that was my trajectory in CPS. 2 years ago, I received a call from a suburban district, 112 Highland Park, and they told me, we want you to come and do your art here. And I have to share that it was very difficult for me to do that transition because in my naivete, I thought that being a principal in Chicago public schools was like being a principal in
Anywhere.
anywhere,
No,
right?
sir.
So, oh my goodness, I went and I started doing school improvement plan. I started doing all these changes, and everybody in the downtown office, district office was, hey, excuse me, why are you doing that? Why you're approving this financial transaction or this absence or this? You don't do that. And the lesson for me to tell everybody else is that, listen, before you move anywhere, see their board meetings, look at their documents, ask questions to know what are you allowed to do or not, because in every district, especially if you're coming from an urban district to a suburban district, is going to be different, and you cannot assume that it's going to be the same.
Very different, very different. So I remember when, and you made me remember when I first met you, I think you were near the beginning of the doctoral program.
Mhm.
And I just remember you just always think like something's not right with what I'm doing at work. Like something's not right with how I'm handling work. I'm a principal, but I feel like I'm struggling. Like, and it wasn't like your school work and your work. You were appearing to be two like totally different people. If you were to sum up the experience you had at the school where you feel like you didn't do it as well as you could have, even though you know a lot of that wasn't your fault, what's the biggest lesson
Well,
for new school leaders?
I went from being the most hated principal to Illinois Elementary School Principal of the Year in a period of 6 years.
Wow.
So like right after I finished the doctorate, all these accolades started happening, and I was recruited to be in the suburbs, and that gave me a lot of sense of success. And I think that when I look back, I think that you have to combine, thus my show, Wisdom and Productivity. You have to combine both wisdom and productivity. You can
Mm.
know a lot of stuff, you can read a lot, but if you don't talk to the people, if you don't experience from the experts, if you don't sit down to empathize with the people that you're leading, and stop thinking that you know everything, that you are supposed to lead everything, and you start empowering others, I think that's where I was able to experience some success. I was able to understand that in education, like in any other profession, success doesn't mean that you're going up, 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 up. It ups and downs constantly, daily. And you like the best analogy is like a school principal is like a physician in an emergency room. Every time that you go, that building, that situation is always going to be on fire. There's always something that you have to address. And when you are able to control your emotions and understand them, you're better able to deal with the reality that there's always going to be something incomplete. There's always going to be someone in need, and everybody's going to expect and demand the best of you. So I think that I was able to understand that there was never going to be a day where I was going to drive to work or leave from work saying,
I got
problem
this.
solved, right? This
Got an
is
A
done,
plus
right? And
today.
and I think when I started in National Louis with you, I was thinking that I was going to find an answer where I was going to go home and go back home thinking, oh, everything is perfect. Because I will see successful principals in their Twitter accounts or in conferences, and they look so elegant and they look so calm. And I assumed that meant that they didn't have problems, they didn't have
Right.
issues to deal with because they had solved them, they had found the formula. But the formula is of consistency, that you are a firefighter, that you are a physician in the emergency room, that there's always going to be that pressure as Freddie Mercury when the curtains open and the show starts. You're gonna feel that sense of, maybe imposter syndrome overtaking you, and you have to overtake it. You have to empower yourself, realizing that you are there to make the situation better, not to just fix it. There's
Nice.
nothing to fix. It's always something to improve.
Nice, 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 nice. So if you were to look back on I started with thinking about your current position, but any position that you've held as a school leader, what is something you're most proud of in terms of that work? Like when you look back on it, you go, this thing right here, I did that right.
Yeah. I have a picture where my school surprises me with the elementary school principal of the year award, and everybody's in the hallway, everybody's so organized, and just waiting. And people know that I don't like surprises. I don't do unannounced observations because I don't want people to be stressed that the principal is coming.
Right.
um, I am all in a daily basis addressing my mental health issues, so everybody knows I don't like surprises. But my AP comes and says, "Hey, we know you don't like surprises, but we have a surprise for
Surprise
you. So
you.
can you come, right?" And seeing there, I could only be very proud of that moment because, it represented the just a minuscule moment in my career where students, faculty, and parents were saying, "Hey, thank you for what you had done." It was like the first time that I was able to savor a little bit of success in my career, and also a reminder that the next day the fire was still going to be
Yes,
there,
yes,
right? Right? It
yes.
was like, hey, at the end of climbing that mountain, I'm gonna realize there's gonna be an even higher mountain to climb. And having that plague in my office, every time I feel like, what a difficult day. I didn't get the scores. The 5 essentials didn't come the way I wanted it. I see that, and I see like how happy I was in that moment that everybody said, "Thank you so much." But also, I didn't get to be in this difficult position to get praises, to get, no, I did it because I wanted to make a difference. It was my vocation, and that is the price. When people realize individually, they tell you in your face, "Oh, thank you for doing this.
Mm,
Oh, I appreciate that you listened to me. I understood," right? Like think that is just a representation of the when people say, "What do you make?" Well, you make people better. You make people feel secure. You make people feel united. I think that is a representation of everything else that has occurred.
I love it. I love it. Okay, so one thing that I know about you from the moment that I met you is when you show up, at least in my classes. And when we talk outside of class, you show up like the real you. Like you don't try to be whatever you think I think a student should have been or whatever. And sometimes in the workplace, when we go like our real selves, it's a little bit too much for people sometimes. Or people want us to be a certain kind of way. So how does the real you show up at work? How do you do it with the amount of joy that you do it with, because I know that's a part of who you are. Um, and sometimes people think principals aren't supposed to be like that, right? We're not supposed to be joyous
Yeah.
or enjoy a job, but I know you can't hide the real Efrain. So how does that come through?
Well, I am I would say there's a suit, there's a I wouldn't call it a superhero, but there's a suit that you wear to work, and there's a suit that you wear in your personal and private life, right?
Yes.
The other day I was listening to an interview with Principal Cafele, and he was saying that like when he does his presentation, he's like, I'm on fire. He goes and like he's like very motivated, right? So like my persona at work is my true personality of servants. I think that schools need to be fun. School needs to be an environment where people feel safe and protected, and they're working towards an improvement. And like you said, sometimes it is difficult for someone. They look at you like, wait, what's going on with you, right? Like,
Yes.
and I move my hands and I'm loud, right? And sometimes, especially moving from the city to a suburban district, at the beginning, and still some people look at me like, whoa, what is this person on something? Where it is 6 o'clock in the school play? Why you're so like motivated and saying hi to everybody? Say like, you know what? You have to make everything possible to bring joy in someone's life. To like Dale Carnegie says, smile. You need to smile at people, because when you
Yes.
smile and you look at people in the eyes, you're better able to connect with the people. And I think that at the end of the day, it is truly exhausting, right? Exhausting because you are receiving punches that the scores are not the way it should be, or the attendance, or that student is in service, that foster child is having a difficult situation and nobody else is experiencing, or you have a teacher that is not giving their best, and one side of you wants to be like, oh, why is this happening? But you know that if you do the wrong move, it's like emotional contagion. You know, when Todd Whitaker says, when the principal sneezes, the school catches a flu. So
Hmm.
you had to be so aware that when at the end of the day, when the day finishes and you're driving home, it's like you're so beat, you're so tired, because that emotional part of you have been going 100 miles per hour, and then you kind of like window down, and my family in many ways have gotten used to that. That at
Hmm.
home is very calm, very quiet, and the wife is telling, let's go, and I just drive them, and they walked, my children and my wife walk, and I'm behind them like a bodyguard. But I'm at work, I'm like, whoo, I'm the first one. I'm like, hey, how you doing? High five. And and I think that it is that persona that I have decided to embrace,
Okay.
because it's my true self. And it just takes you take the suit down,
Yep.
and you become that quiet, um, calm person. And I think that yeah, it's like a combination of high and low, before and after work.
Love it. Love it. So one thing I also know about you is equity and getting this work right has always been at the forefront for you, always been important. So in your current position, what types of equitable work are you doing? How do you feel like you're going to really make a difference in terms of equity in your position?
So I work right now in a suburban district where in a school where I have students that come in yellow buses or walking, and I have students that arrive in Teslas with those doors that open.
Hmm.
So it's a school where 56% of the students are Latino. Many of them are living in poverty. So it's a school that struggles a lot with situations of equity. because it's a district that does a lot of things that are equal, right? There's two middle schools, so if one middle school gets X, the other middle school has to get X as well. And that is something that they have struggled with. And one of the purposes of bringing me in was to try to bring equity into the school district. But this is a challenge, right? Because not criticizing, reporting. A lot of people talk about equity, but it doesn't, you don't find it in the budgets, you don't find it in the policies, you don't
Yes.
find it in the movements that people do, and it can cause controversy. All you have to do is read the newspapers or watch any news, and you realize that the country is on fire right now based on this,
Yes.
right? One of my favorite interviews was with a professor in UIC, Dave Stovall, and he said this quote: "Since when historical accuracy became a threat," right?
Mm,
And it's like it's so monumental in my trajectory of embracing equity, because sometimes we don't want to see the reality, because we don't want to feel how wrong we have acted towards several of the populations
yes.
represented. So I think one of my legacies that I have left in this school, I'm transitioning now to a new district, is that the case against zero. And let me briefly explain it. If in school you have students who are living in trauma and they don't have someone at home supporting them, they don't have a family that can afford tutoring service after school or trips to Japan during spring break, right? You have to make accommodations in the school to adjust to the reality that some students are going to need some support. And grading can make a student feel confident or not confident. So the case against zero says that if an A is 10 points, a B is 10 points, a C is 10 points, a D is 10 points, but an F is 49 points.
Mm,
Right? So a student living in trauma, and remember, trauma lives in both wealth and poverty. Whenever they miss one assignment, they have 5 more times to work harder than a student that got a D or a C or a B, right? So establishing this and changing the way things have been done has been quite a journey, because some people are completely
so-
against it, saying, oh, but how students are going to learn if we are giving them an F that is 10 points? And that misses what the research says about grading policies.
mm,
Um, it has been a trajectory. I don't know if when I leave, they are going to change it, because in the other middle school it's not done like that, and it has to be equal. But it's something that the cross I've been able to die on was that.
that one.
And sometimes as a school principal, as a leader, you have to make decisions even if they go against what everybody thinks should be. And sometimes that decision costs for you to have to move away, because they don't want you to be there any longer.
I love it. I love that you stick to your principles. Okay, so we always end with a quote that reminds me of the person that I'm speaking to. And when I was thinking about interviewing you, the quote that I thought up came from Arthur Ashe. Um, the best way to judge a life is to ask yourself, did I make the best use of the time that I had? What do you think about that? How do you apply that to your life?
Well, when you send it to me, I was like immediately connected. I live my life in quotes. I think it's a great way to see life, and I connected to this journey of the case against zero. That, sometimes change only happens when one person is willing to put their presence on the line in representation of the support that some people need. In other words, in order to make an omelette, you need to break some eggs. And I truly believe that when you do good things happen. So that is something that I will never regret, and I am proud of it.
I am so excited about our conversation, Dr. Efrain. I'm so glad, number one, that I met you when I did. I think everything happens at the time that it's supposed to happen anyway. I'm so proud of you, number one, finishing your doctorate in the manner in which you did. You stuck to it. That's a whole different podcast episode that we need to make for people who get stuck and like can't finish, because it's such a reality. Like more than 85% of people who start don't get done. You did that. You stuck to it. You have been principal of the year. You have a podcast. Tell us the name of your podcast before we go.
The
Also,
name of the podcast is Wisdom and Productivity, and it is a continuation of that journey. Instead of like shadowing people that are successful, now I contact and reach out to people like you, Gloria, and say, hey, would you be able to tell us about your wisdom? Who do you learn from? What do you read? How are you inspired by? How do you address imposter syndrome? And your productivity, how the heck do you get organized to ensure that you get to do great things and still live a fructiferous life?
I love it. I love it. Thank you so very much. And like I said, I couldn't be prouder. And this is going to be a great episode. So
Thank
thank
you,
you
Gloria.
so very much for being here with us tonight.
Appreciate it.